Very good evening, dear students. Welcome to Bajirao IAS Academy, the Hindu News Analysis. Today is 12th May 2025 and today we have some important topics for the discussion, and one by one we'll try to discuss all these important topics in a very detailed and in-depth manner. And the first topic with which we are going to start this discussion is about the air quality management in India. This is an important topic for your general studies paper 3, particularly for your mains examination and for prelims examination also. This is important. So let's try to understand the context of the air quality management in India. However, recent concerns, particularly over India's excessive dependence on the foreign funded air quality research. However, in India, air quality research is being done, but the most of the air quality research is dominated by the foreign funding. And apart from this particular concern, we also have another major concern, that is a recent global climate data network disruption also took place because of Donald Trump's US administration. So because of these different reasons, it has reignited the debate on the self-reliance, the need for self-reliance, particularly Atmanirbharta in India's air pollution strategy. So we need to have an air pollution strategy, and this air pollution strategy must be based on Atmanirbharta or self-reliance, because we have significantly dependent on the foreign entities, foreign funding for conducting studies on environmental pollution management. And in fact, in recent times there are also disruptions in global climate data networks as well, and that's why there is an increasing demand for self-reliance or Atmanirbharta in India's pollution management strategy. However, there are certain gaps which are existing in India's air quality management. So what are the primary gaps which are existing in India's air quality management? The first gap is that most of the studies that are conducted on Indian soil using Indian talent and Indian infrastructure are the foreign funded studies. So therefore, it has been indicating that Indian pollution management studies are mostly funded by the foreign initiatives and foreign entities. So therefore, there is an excessive dependence on the foreign initiatives for Indian air pollution management research and studies. Secondly, we all knew that the Central Pollution Control Board is known as nodal agency for controlling, managing pollution levels in India. However, resources are allocated for the management of pollution. However, what has been happening is that there is a significant underutilization of domestic resources for controlling the pollution, because it has been pointed out by the pollution control boards regularly returning the unspent funds to the government, and also many Indian institutions also fail to lead despite being a well-funded, and they are capable as well. So there are several such agencies, but those agency failed to take lead despite being well-funded and even capable enough to study, research, collect data about the environmental pollution and its management. And in fact, most of the foreign collaborations we have with respect to air quality management and funding are only channelized to the elite institutions. Not all stakeholders are taken into consideration, but most of the funding and foreign collaborations are mostly channelized to the elite institutions, and thereby marginalizing the broader national capacity building efforts. However, there are certain missed opportunities despite the indigenous capacity. So what does it mean when we say the indigenous capacity? So firstly, we have the funding mechanism, right? Because Central Pollution Control Boards are regularly returning the unspent funds, so that indicating that so we have a substantial amount of funding. There are other Indian institutions also, despite having funding and capability, they fail to take lead when it comes to the air quality management, air quality research, etc. And similarly, most of these foreign funded air quality management research and studies are being conducted on Indian soil with the Indian talent and infrastructure. So therefore, it has been indicating that so we have the indigenous capacity, right? So that is what is called as Atmanirbharta or self-reliance in the air quality management in India itself. However, India in 2010 launched SAFAR system. So SAFER system with respect to the air quality management. However, this is considered as a scientific breakthrough, but it remained confined to just 4 cities. So as of now, this SAFER system is just confined to Delhi, Ahmedabad, Mumbai and Pune. So these 4 cities only this SAFER system has been confined to. So there is a need to expand this SAFER system to other cities as well for a comprehensive data or a comprehensive image on the air quality across different cities in India and also the air quality management as well. Secondly, the strong domestic institutions also existing. For example, the Indian Meteorological Department and the Earth Sciences Systems Organization. So they are considered as world class because they have necessary expertise, they have necessary infrastructure. But the problem is that these agencies and institutions fail to coordinate with the Central Pollution Control Board and also other state agencies, right? So because of this inadequate collaboration, inadequate engagement of these agencies with the CB and state agencies, it has been resulting in a poor air quality management or lack of adequate data, research and conducting a comprehensive study on the environmental pollution management. However, the government of India has already launched schemes or programs like Make in India program. However, a scientific self-reliance in air quality data monitoring, forecasting has not materialized at a scale that is actually required, right? So despite launching schemes like Make in India schemes, so the scientific self-reliance in air quality data, air quality monitoring and also forecasting has not materialized at a huge scale. Now in this context, what should be the way forward that the authors have been suggesting? So the author has been suggesting that there should be an Atmanirbhar air quality strategy, right? So the government of India should create an Atmanirbhar air quality strategy, and this air quality strategy should focus on creation of a unified resource framework such as National Air Quality Research Framework in India, which is also called as NARFI, right? So this is National Air Quality Resource Framework of India, and in fact it is proposed as a collaborative, evidence-based and even interdisciplinary knowledge platform. And in fact, when we talk about the air quality management in India, so air quality management in India is having certain gaps, certain shortcomings. What are those shortcomings? So there is no collaboration between different agencies, different entities in India. There is no data available. So if we have data, so that will result in evidence-based policy making, evidence-based decision making or data-driven decision making, right? So if we are able to create National Air Quality Resource Framework of India, this will result in a much more collaborative, evidence-based and interdisciplinary knowledge framework in India. So that makes achieving Atmanirbharta in air quality management not excessively depending on the other countries for the air quality management research and other important studies with respect to the air quality. Secondly, the authors have been suggesting that there is a need to move beyond the city-specific models. So as of now, the air quality management strategy is excessively focusing on the city-specific models, but there is a need to move beyond the city-specific models. So therefore, India must adopt a regionally integrated airshed management. So that specifically means that taking together number of cities, taking together a larger area. So this is an integrated airshed management system using a fine gridded emission data. So that will help us identify the areas which are having poor air quality, and it also helps us develop a comprehensive map of air pollution, or it will also help us focus or target certain regions which are having the poor air quality. And apart from that, it is also suggested that there should be a strategy, and that strategy should focus on health and food security, right? So when we are focusing on a comprehensive strategy for the air quality management, it should also focus on health and food security of the public, right? So future policy must integrate the air quality with public health and food production goals to build a robust and autonomous environmental strategy as well. Now, all these different strategies primarily aimed at achieving self-reliance in the air quality management, so that we will not depend on the foreign entities or foreign countries for air quality management in India. So it is very important that air pollution is a major problem that the Indian cities have been facing. Because of air pollution, there are several health risks that human beings have been facing. So there are number of reasons for air pollution. For example, industrial effluents is one reason, or industrial emissions. Vehicular emissions is also another major reason. And similarly, landfill sites, open burning of landfill sites is also another major reason. Stubble burning is also another major reason. So therefore, all these different factors have been contributing to the substantial levels of air pollution in India, right? So therefore, in order to deal with air pollution, we need to develop adequate capabilities and capacities within India itself. So that could actually take into account the need for funding, the need for evidence and data collection, because that would usher in data driven and evidence based policy making. And apart from that, skilling or technical manpower development, effective collaboration, and also the interdisciplinary nature of the knowledge networks or knowledge platforms are very important to make sure that we indigenize the air quality management strategies, and we would also substantially reduce our dependence on foreign entities and other foreign countries for funding, research and other types of scientific techniques when it comes to the air quality management within India. However, there is a need for an urgent intervention when it comes to air quality management in India. So on this image, different air pollutants have been given. So these are the most important air pollutants. Remember that carbon dioxide is not considered as a air pollutant, right? So sulfur monoxide is one of the main air pollutant. It could cause the respiratory problems among human beings, right? So sulfur dioxide is primarily emitted from the consumption of fossil fuels such as oil, coal, natural gas, and it also reacts with the water, and it is even causes acid rain as well. And ozone is also considered as an air pollutant. Remember, there are two different types of ozone. One is good ozone, second one is bad ozone. So ground level ozone is considered as the bad ozone. Ground level ozone is considered as bad ozone, and stratospheric ozone is considered as good ozone, right? So ozone is actually a secondary pollutant that is being formed from other pollutants such as nitrous oxide and volatile organic compounds, right? So volatile organic compounds and nitrous oxide, so they together form secondary pollutant like the ground level ozone, right? So it requires sunlight. In the presence of sunlight, so when nitrous oxide and volatile organic compounds react, they form ground level ozone, right? So it actually impact eyes, respiratory system in human beings, and even it causes asthma attacks as well. So thirdly, nitrogen dioxide is also considered as an air pollutant. So nitrogen dioxide is primarily emitted from the road transport, industry, energy production sectors. So thereby it has been contributing to ground level ozone and even the particulate matter formation as well. Particulate matter 2.5 and particulate matter 10 as well. So carbon monoxide is also another most severe air pollutant, and the carbon monoxide is primarily emitted from the combustion of the fossil fuels, right? Particularly the incomplete combustion of the carbon containing compounds. And in fact, carbon monoxide essentially result in fatigue, confusion, or dizziness among the human beings. Therefore, all these different air pollutants would have a certain health related effects on human beings, right? So there is an urgent need to act against air pollution. So the second important article is why farmers in India prefer rice and wheat over other crops. And in fact, this is also a very important article, a very important topic. So that is given in the Indian Express newspaper in explained section, and this will be important for your general studies paper 3 of UPSC examination, and for prelims examination also. This is a very important topic, because in general studies 3 itself, agriculture is a major section. It is a major topic in general studies paper 3. So therefore, it is a very important topic. So what is the context why this article has been given? So the context is that there have been increasing calls for crop diversification, right? So crop diversification is good for the soil fertility, good for the environment, and even it increases the incomes of the farmers as well, and it will result in sustainable agriculture. But after green revolution, what happened in India was most of the agriculture is dominated by two staple crops. One is wheat and other is rice. So because of green revolution, what has happened is that monocropping is become a major phenomenon, right? However, monocropping is associated with several harmful and negative impacts on the environment and ecosystem, and it even substantially reducing the soil fertility as well. So declining soil fertility means farmers need to use excess amounts of fertilizer, excess amount of the pesticides as well. So ultimately it impacts human health, right? So it impacts human health, it will impact farmers' income, and it will also substantially reduce the fertility of the soils. So therefore, there is a need to promote or encourage crop diversification in India. So however, the problem in India is most of the agriculture is dominated by two crops only, wheat and rice, right? So in this context, we'll understand what are the reasons why farmers have been mostly preferring rice or wheat instead of other crops, and what needs to be done so that the farmers can be encouraged to cultivate other crops as well. And despite there are various policy efforts to promote the crop diversification, so I have just explained why crop diversification is important for any country, but particularly for India, but rice and wheat continue to dominate the Indian agriculture, right? So in fact, rice and wheat, so they continue to dominate the Indian agriculture sector across different regions. For example, when we talk about the wheat, it is mostly dominant in Punjab. Wheat and rice, it is mostly dominant in Haryana, Punjab, Madhya Pradesh, Telangana, and even parts like Eastern India, Uttar Pradesh and Chhattisgarh. So these crops are majorly dominates the Indian agriculture among all different crops. So however, this monocropping practice of rice and wheat, it is not considered as a casual thing, it is not an incidental thing, rather it has been shaped by a combination of factors. So we'll understand what are the factors which have been responsible for the domination of rice and wheat in Indian agriculture sector. For example, the government of India provides MSP for both rice and wheat, right? So in fact, government of India provide MSP for 23 crops, but wheat and rice are two crops among different crops to which the government of India provides MSP, but combination of different factors. One factor is MSP that the government announces for rice and wheat, and yield reliability for the farmers. irrigation access, market access, and even the continuous technological advancements. So these combination of factors are primarily responsible for the monocropping or dominance of wheat and rice in Indian agriculture sector. Now, why India opts for rice and wheat? So in a detailed manner, we'll try to understand why India opts for rice and wheat. And in fact, so we all knew that in India, agriculture is a main activity, main economic activity. However, it is not just an economic activity in India, but also a high risk livelihood. High risk livelihood in the sense that majority of the farmers, like around 83% of the farmers, are small and marginal farmers, and most of the Indian agriculture is rain fed agriculture, and we have poor market access also. Farmers are not getting the remunerative prices for their produce, and apart from that, tenant farmers are not recognized in India properly, and farmers don't have access to the institutional credit as well, despite the measures taken by the policy measures taken by the governments at the center and states. Farmers don't have access to the institutional credit. So what happens, farmers very often dependent on the local money lenders. Local money lenders very often charge a high amount of interest rates on these farmers, and ultimately it will lead to the farm debt, right? So accumulation of farm debt, and accumulation of this farm debt very often compel farmers to sometimes commit suicide in case of a crop failure, right? So crop failure may be because of multiple reasons, such as due to flood, or due to drought like conditions, right? Drought like conditions, flood, particularly because of the climate change, right? So because of all these reasons, sometimes there will be a crop failure as well, right? So because of that reason, Indian agriculture is said that it is a high risk livelihood, because it is subjected to unpredictable monsoons and even the input cost volatility as well. So what are the inputs? For example, seeds are considered as inputs, fertilizer, pesticides, and mechanization. So everything is considered as the input. However, in India, input cost volatility is also very high. In fact, the government of India introduced a scheme called PM Kisan. So under PM Kisan, the government has been providing an incentive of 6,000 rupees for the farmers. However, 6,000 rupees of incentive, financial incentive for the farmers is inadequate, because this 6,000 rupees also the government provides in 3 installments. One installment 2,000 rupees, right? So there is a high input cost volatility in India, and market price crashes also very common phenomenon, and even the crop failure due to pests and poor weather conditions, right? So that's why in India, agriculture is considered as a high risk livelihood. However, in such a risky environment, farmers naturally prefer crops. So we already knew that agriculture is a high risk livelihood. So since it is a high risk a livelihood option for the farmers, farmers usually prefer certain crops where there will be higher yield or yield predictability, market access, and government also provides MSP. So there will be lesser risk involved if farmers cultivate those crops, and that's why farmers have been excessively leaned towards cultivating rice and wheat. So I hope it is clear, you have understood this, right? In such a risky environment, farmers naturally prefer crops that give them assured prices, stable yields, and even the government procurement support, along with a low probability of complete crop loss. So therefore, because of all these advantages with the cultivation of wheat and rice, so farmers prefer to cultivate these two crops, right? So firstly, there will be assured prices. How assured prices? Because the government provides MSP to both rice and wheat. Secondly, if you cultivate rice or wheat, so you could expect stable yield from both these crops. However, if you cultivate any other crop, so there is no guarantee that you would achieve stable yield, because you have no expertise, you have no knowledge and experience, and there is no guarantee that you would get a stable yield. But with respect to rice and wheat, you would get stable yield. So it is an insurance, it is a security for the farmers. Secondly, the government procurement support. So government will also procure your produce, right? And market is also available for both wheat and rice. And apart from that, there will be no complete crop loss like other crops, right? So with respect to wheat and rice, there will be no complete crop loss. So therefore, because of all these reasons, farmers have been choosing to cultivate rice and wheat instead of other crops, and that leads to the dominance of wheat and rice in Indian agriculture and monocropping practices. And in fact, we all knew that the government of India announces the minimum support prices on the recommendations of Commission for Agricultural Costs and Prices CACP before the advent of every cropping season, before Rabi and before Kharif also. However, the biggest reason behind India's rice and wheat domination is the MSP system. So since MSP is provided for both wheat and rice, farmers are incentivized to cultivate rice and wheat, right? So in fact, the government is also procuring the wheat and rice, providing the farmers MSP or the remunerative prices. Secondly, Food Corporation of India and other agencies procure wheat and rice in a bulk amount. And procurement is almost guaranteed for both wheat and rice, especially in few states like Punjab, Haryana, Madhya Pradesh and Telangana. So therefore, it is risk-free, assured prices for the farmers. Farmers have the experiences and expertise of cultivating these crops. Farmers also have access to the markets, and that's why the farmers have been cultivating the wheat and rice, and that leads to monocropping in Indian agriculture. And in fact, even if market prices crashes, for example, imagine that after Kharif, produce has been harvested, the rice produce has been harvested, and because of harvesting of rice takes place in 1 or 2 months, what happens is that this harvested rice flood the markets. So once it floods the market, then it will result in price crash of the rice, and so now farmers at the disadvantaged position. But here MSP is actually acting as an insurance or security for the farmers, right? So if price crash, then farmers get the pre-announced MSP for their produce. Thereby MSP is acting as an insurance cover, and that is not available for all other crops, right? So these are some reasons why the Indian farmers are opting for wheat and rice instead of other crops. So there are some other reasons also. One is irrigation advantage, and even it is having a low yield risk. So low yield risk in the sense that we could get a stable yield when we cultivate both wheat and rice. So that is low yield risk, and both wheat and rice are also having the irrigation advantage as well, because the rice and wheat are extensively grown under irrigated conditions, so they require irrigation. And in fact, the irrigation reduces its dependence on rainfall, right? So since they are extensively grown under irrigated conditions, so that reduces dependence on rainfall. And in fact, rice traditionally requires a lot of water, and rice is also known as the water intensive crop. Sugarcane is also a water intensive crop. Remember that in UPSC examination this question has been asked. So which crop is a water intensive crop or less water intensive crop? So that was asked. So however, here the millets, pulses are less water intensive crops, right? So that's why it is being said that in drought like conditions, in arid areas, semi-arid areas, so pulses and millets should be cultivated because they could withstand drought like conditions, because they are less water intensive crops. However, rice is a water intensive crop, and in fact it is supported by canal irrigation in states like Punjab or the groundwater pumping in Telangana, and that actually reduces the dependence on the rainfall. And in fact, the two crops have less chances of total failure or complete failure. Once you cultivate either rice or wheat, so there is no chance that there will be a complete failure of rice and wheat. They are more fertilizer responsive and also have a predictable outcomes as well. So therefore, it will become easier for the farmers to cultivate both rice and wheat and also sell their produce in the market once it is harvested. And even in recent times, a significant amount of research and development also took place after the Green Revolution. There are high yield varieties, right? So high yield varieties is basically considered as the foundation of the Green Revolution in India in both rice and wheat. So this high yield varieties or genetically edited crops, so all these different factors and even new varieties, particularly the genetically edited new varieties that the agricultural universities or research institutions have been announcing, they have been substantially increasing the yield of both rice and wheat. And that's the another major reason why farmers have been increasingly cultivating rice and wheat. It has been dominating. So here some information about the minimum support prices have been given. So minimum support price is the price at which the government agencies procure the crops from the farmers at MSP. So that is the minimum support price, and it is a very simple definition of minimum support price. So as of now, the government announced minimum support price for 23 commodities at the start of each cropping season. So there are 3 cropping season: Kharif season, Rabi season and Jaid season. However, MSP is announced before the starting of the cropping season of Rabi and Kharif. And in fact, the commodities include 22 mandated crops and fair and remunerative price for the sugarcane as well. Right? So these are the different crops which are covered under the MSP regime. So oil seeds are given MSP, commercial crops are given MSP, pulses and cereals are also covered under this MSP regime. Now, what's happening to the other crops? We have discussed why farmers are interested to cultivate wheat and rice. So what's happening with the other crops? Right? So with respect to other crops like cotton, they have not seen any major breeding breakthroughs after BT cotton. So it is true that BT cotton has been introduced into Indian agriculture, and this genetically modified variety of BT cotton has substantially increased the yield of cotton. However, after introducing BT cotton, there was no major breeding breakthroughs in cotton. Right? Secondly, there is a lack of approval for certain genetically modified crops. For example, GM mustard has not been given approval, and GM brinjal is also not given approval by the government. So therefore, there is a lack of approval for new GM crops, and that further limits the productivity gains in other sectors as well. And in fact, so this absence of innovation coupled with weak procurement system for other crops, that actually makes pulses, oil seeds, millets less economically attractive. So it is true that the government has been providing for multiple number of crops, but the government is not procuring other crops with the same intensity as rice and wheat. So that makes cultivation of other crops less economically attractive or incentive for the farmers, despite millets and pulses having nutritional and the ecological importance as well. However, crops like millets, pulses, oil seeds may be more suited to India's agroclimate, especially in rain-fed areas, because I've told you that pulses and millets can withstand such harsh climates and they can be cultivated in arid and semi-arid regions. However, the problem is that despite India's agroclimatic zones supporting cultivation of millets, pulses, oil seeds, the price realization is not stable for these crops, and that has been disincentivizing the farmers to cultivate these crops. and even these crops don't enjoy the mass procurement or assured market. So there is no assured market, there is no mass procurement of these crops. And in fact, these crops also face higher yield risk due to the less irrigation and even poor research attention or extension services. And because of all these reasons, farmers are less inclined towards cultivating these crops other than wheat and rice. Right. So as I've already told you, there are different cropping seasons such as Kharif season, Rabi season, Jaid season. Right. So in fact, certain crops which are considered as Kharif crops: paddy, maize, jowar, bajra, tur, and moong, cotton, jute, soybean. So these are considered as the Kharif crops, and there are certain Rabi crops also: wheat, barley, peas, gram, and mustard. So these are Rabi crops, and there are certain Jaid crops also. In Jaid season, it is a very short season. Fruits and vegetables are cultivated during this particular season. However, what should be done so that the farmers can be encouraged to cultivate other crops as well, and it will result in crop diversification as well. So for that, extension services. So extension services should be provided to the farmers, and this is a very important aspect that has to be focused on. And apart from that, we need to focus on export of food, right? And food processing is also another area where we could actually encourage the farmers to cultivate other crops as well. And thirdly, a procurement of these crops or procurement centers as well, and large scale awareness about the benefits of cultivation of pulses, millets, because we have just understood that pulses and millets have both ecological, nutritional importance. So all these different measures have to be taken, and in fact the high yield varieties should also be introduced in other crops as well, so that if we can introduce high yield varieties, so they would have a less yield risk like wheat and rice. Right, so all these different measures have to be undertaken by the government and other stakeholders so that the farmers can be encouraged to cultivate or take up other crops as well. The next important topic is caste census in India. So caste census in India is repeatedly in use, and this is also a very, very important topic for your General Studies paper 2. So particularly for your General Studies paper 2, caste census is very important, and there are chances that this may be even asked in your General Studies paper 1 as well. So what is the context of this particular article? So the context is that the government recently made an announcement that the upcoming census will also include the caste details. So caste details across different parts of India. However, this announcement of the government of India is being viewed as a major shift in policy that could transform social justice, planning, and reservation systems. Now understand one thing, that there are certain backward castes in India, and those backward castes have been given reservations in education and public employment. However, if we get to know about the caste and their status, the social and economic educational status, so it will altogether transform the social justice and also the reservation systems in India. Now there are already plans for the subcategorization of other backward classes, and recently we heard that the state of Telangana and the state of Andhra Pradesh have subcategorized the scheduled caste population as well. Now why this subcategorization? Because understand one thing, when we say SCs, STs or other backward classes, so these groups, so SCs are not one single caste, STs are not one single caste, so there are number of backward classes who form scheduled caste, who form scheduled tribes and the other backward classes. So however, I'll tell you one example. In OBCs, it is being said that Yadavs are the most dominant within the OBCs, and in India OBCs are given 27% of reservation as per the Mandal Commission. Now since Yadavs are most dominant caste within the OBCs, so most of the beneficiaries of the 27% of this reservation could be the progressive Yadav community. A very less amount of reservation benefit is being penetrated into the other caste groups, which are considered as the most backward caste groups. And that's why the subcategorization of OBCs, SCs and STs is very important, to make sure there will be a social justice and reservation benefits also benefit all other caste groups, right? So therefore it will altogether transform the social justice planning and the reservation system once we have the data about this census. And in fact, this decision will allow a long-standing debate on the need for a comprehensive caste data that India should have. Especially, understand one thing, in the year 2011, the socio-economic caste census was conducted, and in fact, in recent times, Bihar also conducted the caste census. However, Bihar successfully conducted the caste census, but it is being said that the 2011 caste census is a failed attempt. There are number of reasons for the failure of socio-economic caste census that was conducted in the year 2011, but in recent times Bihar successfully conducted the caste census. So on the lines of Bihar, several other state governments also conducted this caste census. Now we'll understand what is the constitutional mandate with respect to reservations and the policy contradictions which are existing as of now. And in fact, it is very clear that the Constitution of India mandates the social justice through reservations. So Article 15, Article 16 talks about reservations for socially and educationally backward classes. So in pursuance of this, 27% of the reservation has been given to the other backward classes, 15% reservation has been given to scheduled caste, and 7.5% reservation has been given to the scheduled tribes. Right? So in pursuance of the constitutional mandate of social justice through reservations in education, employment and even elections also, because certain seats are being reserved for the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes in state legislative assemblies and also in Lok Sabha. However, here, despite the constitution has mandated for such reservation, Indian state historically avoided conducting a caste census. Right? So because last caste census was conducted around 1941 at that point of time, and after that caste census were not conducted. But caste census is very important to understand the backwardness of a particular caste, a particular community. But state historically avoided conducting or counting caste, and therefore there is a contradiction in the policy and the intent, policy intent and the execution. There is already a policy intent that flows from the constitution, but there is no execution of that policy intent, firstly. Secondly, Supreme Court has time and again consistently ruled that caste is a valid proxy for identifying backwardness. So if we wanted to identify the backwardness of a particular community, a particular group of people, Supreme Court has ruled that caste can be a one way through which we could identify the backwardness of a particular group. And in fact, it has demanded a granular data to justify the reservations. There should be a data to justify the reservation that has been provided for a particular community. So therefore, this reiteration of the Supreme Court actually emphasized on the need for caste-based enumeration in India. So there is a need for a caste based data to justify the reservations, and Supreme Court has also upheld that caste is a valid proxy for identifying the backwardness. So this also underlines the need for conducting a comprehensive caste census. Third, in fact, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar also criticized the exclusion of caste tables from 1951 census. So 1951 census were already conducted by the independent government, but 1951 census excluded the caste tables, and that was criticized by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. And in fact, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar also called this as a petty intelligence, emphasizing that the visibility in data is a foundational to meaningful inclusion and also equity driven planning. So if we have the data of different castes and their backwardness, it will result in meaningful inclusion and also the equity driven planning in India. And that's why when there is an exclusion of caste tables in 1951 census, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar criticized this. However, there is an administrative necessity also and existing data inequity as well with respect to different castes. So it is being said that other backward classes are constitutionally entitled for reservations, right? So post 73rd and 74th constitutional amendment acts that have provided constitutional status to the local governance, right? So OBCs are constitutionally entitled for reservations, but the absence of the data about the OBCs in the decennial census, it actually obstructs the rational implementation of the reservations, especially in the local governance. And in fact, the current reservation policy lacks a reliable caste data. So we don't have a reliable caste data. So therefore, it leads to the over-representation by dominant OBCs, right? So in fact, 10 OBC castes enjoy around 25% of the reservation benefits. So this, I have already explained this, because OBCs are already given 27% of the reservation, and within OBCs, just 10 OBC castes enjoy 25% of the reservation, while 38 OBCs get only 3% and 37% of OBCs get nothing at all. So this means that within OBCs itself there are most backward classes, and reservation benefits are not given to the most backward classes within OBCs, and that's where there is a need to subcategorize the OBCs as well. So when we subcategorize the OBCs, by subcategorization, the most progressive caste within the OBCs will be given less reservation, and most backward classes within the OBCs will be given more reservation benefit. So when we have frequent caste census, so it will help us undertake important exercise of providing reservation benefits to most needy and deserved categories of people. However, it is being said that limiting caste data to once a decade, right? So just once in a 10 years, the caste data through a comprehensive census is insufficient, because all government surveys should include a disaggregated caste data across all groups to enable ongoing social auditing, right? So the author has been emphasizing that this 10-year exercise, once in a 10-year exercise of caste census or caste data is inadequate. And in fact, we should actually learn from the past failures, and also there is a future roadmap as well. And in fact, as we have already discussed, that the socio-economic caste census of 2011 failed due to a lack of legal mandate, poor institutional coordination, and unstructured data collection methods. So thereby it has produced an unusual data set claiming 46 lakh castes across India. So however, this socio-economic caste census of 2011 not publicly released. And in fact, recently Bihar successfully conducted the caste census, right? So in fact, it has used the already existing list of 214 state specific castes, and a structured enumeration demonstrated that a credible caste count in Bihar, which could be achievable through a proper planning and a proper methodology as well. However, this article has also highlighted actionable steps that have to be taken, including amending the Census Act to collect the caste data regularly, empowering the census commissioners, using digital tools and closed option questionnaires, state specific caste lists, and rigorous training and even piloting in key states before the rollout. So all these different actionable steps that have been suggested, that how to conduct the caste census and how this caste data is very, very important for every state. So that's where there is a need that we should have a comprehensive caste data to implement the reservations in a much more efficient and effective manner. So next important article is about the total fertility rate in India. So there is an important article that has been given in the Hindu newspaper. So it says that a new data that has been released from the sample registration system of 2021. So it has revealed that fertility rates in South India have fallen more sharply than the previously estimated fertility levels. Now, what are these fertility rate or total fertility rate? So we'll understand this, because fertility rate is having important implication on the population of our country. So we'll understand the total fertility rate as well. So according to the data from the sample registration system of 2021, all 5 southern states, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana and Karnataka, so they report the total fertility rates between 1.5 to 1.6, which is significantly lower than the replacement level fertility rate of 2.1 in India. Now, what is a fertility rate? So fertility rate is, to how many children a female would give birth to in her reproductive age. So this is the total fertility rate. In southern states, the total fertility rate, it is between 1.6 to 1.5. However, India's fertility rate is around 2.1 or something like that. So India already achieved this replacement level fertility rate. Right, so what is a fertility rate? So fertility rate, total fertility rate, is the average number of children a woman is expected to have during her lifetime based on current age specific fertility rates. For example, a woman can have 2 children, a woman can have 3 children, and even a woman can have 1 children in her lifetime. But in southern states, it is just 1.5 to 1.6. That's it. But in India, the replacement level fertility rate is 2.1. So that means, for example, imagine that India's population is 100 crore. So replacement fertility actually means that 2.1 actually means that, so if we maintain the very same fertility, it just replaces the existing population. That's it. But population or the total fertility rate below the replacement level fertility actually means there will be a substantial decline in the population in India. So this is what the southern states have been going through. For example, Andhra Pradesh is having 1.7 fertility rate, Karnataka 1.7, Maharashtra 1.7, Tamil Nadu 1.8 and Kerala 1.8. And this ensures that each generation can replace. So this total replacement level fertility ensures that each generation can replace itself without growing or shrinking in size. So that is the replacement level fertility. In India, the replacement level fertility is 2.1. So the total fertility rate below 2.1 actually means that population will eventually starts declining unless it will be offset by immigration or other demographic factors. However, this measure is not just about the births but about maintaining the balance between the generations. And that is very important for the economic stability and even the sustainable society as well. However, it is alarming that the southern states have been experiencing a substantially less total fertility rates, lesser than the replacement level fertility in India as well. So that's all in this lecture, and thank you so much. So if you like our lecture, please subscribe our YouTube channel and also hit the like button. Thank you.